All right, so let's update this sim to the having the pig head in it now. So first things first is we can see our source is all the way over here, and our whole sim is like way back here. So let's move this forward. I'm gonna say, not that way. Let's go the other way. Just one. So that's pretty good. I was just gonna shoot out anyway. I want to give it some room to go. And now the whole thing is nice and centered anyway. So good. So we updated the volume limits there. Let's add the collider in. So the collider, even though it's moving, we actually choose static object. Static in this context means that it itself is not dynamic. Like, we're not simulating the pig head. We've prescribed the animation of the pig head. So it's considered a static object. Passive is probably a better word for it, but what are you gonna do? So click on the merge here and say, or rather here, change it to mutual, which also doesn't really make sense because I just said the pig head's not being affected. Mutual is just so that we can't screw this up. If we keep it as it is, it says left inputs affects right, and the left input is the liquid affects the right, which is that, and that's not what we want. So you can either change the order of it so that the left, the pig head, affects the right, or just make it mutual so that you can't screw it up. So anyway, so there's a static object. Now to account for the fact that it is moving, let's say use deforming geometry. And now let's go point to it. Well, actually, we need to set it up as a collider, which we didn't actually do yet. We have the source set up, but we don't have the collider aspect set up. So let's make another one of these nodes. Call it collider. I'm going to go in here and steal this pig object merge. So I copied that object merge that gets the pig. So there it is. All we need to do is do collision source. Put it here. This doesn't do much. It just basically calculates velocity vectors on the polygons themselves as they move, which is our left input, poly, and the right input is the volumes, actually, the volumetric representation of it, which is what Flip is actually going to care about. Now, as usual, we need to know what the voxel size is. So we got to go back into here. Oh, press escape so it doesn't actually simulate up to 37 in my case. And see how often we end up using this thing? So copy parameter, come back to the collider, paste absolute references. So there you go. So now we have it. I like to do fill interior for our colliders and things for VDB reasons that I won't get into right now. Uh-oh, looks like we got a viewport error. See how it's duplicated? Sometimes this happens. You'll see lingering geometry that's not supposed to be there. So close your scene view, make a new one. And now you can see there's just one bug. Oh well. So we'll make this green also because it's helper geometry. In fact, make all this green. We're not going to render any of this. We'll make renderable versions later. So we've got the polygon representation and we have the volumetric representation. So copy the polygon node here, jump into the sim, and on here we can paste that here on the SOP path. And we need both. We need the polygon representation so the Flip can find those velocities on the points. And then over here in collisions, we needed to have a volumetric representation. Now by default, it will try to make one. I'm going to hide everything for a moment here. By default, it's going to try to make one, which it does a, decent job of it. But we already have one. Again, we made the volume data. So instead of trying to build it ourselves, go to volume sample. And here we can go find that collision, the volume null in the under collider. And now we have it. The VDB tool, that's collision source tool, OTL, HDA, whatever you want to call it, that node, this one, does a better job setting up the volume. So this is usually the preferred workflow now, is volume sample, which basically just means just use this one. you'll notice if you have it at ray, you can increase this and it gets more detail. Oh, maybe too high. But if we go to volume sample, it just reads it and it doesn't matter what this says. So that's just a little fun note for you there. Uh-oh, come back. Wonderful. Now, as everything is tied to this voxel size, increasing, or rather decreasing the particle separation will decrease the voxel size also for the collider. So while we get higher resolution liquid, we also get higher resolution colliders. So I'm going to turn that off again, turn the collision guide off. You can keep the regular display on if you like. I think I would prefer not to. In fact, a good way to debug things, make sure it's all working correctly, is back here on the flip object, go to guides, turn on collision here. Because that collision volume is actually copied, or really it's sampled, into the flip solver itself. So let's make sure that that's happening correctly by just running it. And sure enough, we can already see that it is. See this purple stuff? This is Flip's knowledge of what the collision looks like. You'll also notice this smaller box within the big one. Flip is only generating volumes right around a bounding box of the liquid itself. So we're saving lots of processing power up here by not doing that. By not going up to the top, I mean. But that's also why it looks like our collider's cut off. And that's because there's no liquid that could conceivably collide with it anyway. We're only simulating stuff around the liquid. So anyway, this purple stuff here is a slice of the pig head that is relevant as a collider to our simulation. Pretty cool, right? If only I could hear your response. So there you go. We're really getting somewhere now. The liquid has so much more life. You can see how it's being spilled left and right. It's going up and down. You can see it's splashing on the pig here for the first time. It's not just this boring collision. And remember, things that we set up earlier, like stick-on collision, is being applied too. So it's kind of, it's not stuck to it, but it is kind of sliding along the surface a little bit better than it would have without that stick-on collision parameter on that we said before. Oh, look at that. Makes a really big wave at the end there. Plash. That's because it's getting caught under there. And that's not wrong, so I'm just going to leave it. Cool. Splash. It kind of hits the ceiling in a fun way, too. Cool. All right. So pretty fast sim overall. Looks like our sim is actually going way longer than my scene even is. Not sure why that is. It says RFN. Huh, weird. More bugs. Anyway,